Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Hafifah, and I would like to present to you about a cognitive stylistics analysis of the poem The Sick Rose by William Blake. So, William Blake was an English poet, and one of his works, which is regarded as one of the most enigmatic poems in English literature, is called The Sick Rose. And this study aims at exploring the patterns and the coherence among figures of speech and new conceptual mapping and new image schemas, of which, and the source of data is the manuscript of the poem itself, and the data is or are the clauses, phrases, or words of the source of the data. So this presentation would break down three theoretical background. The first one is cognitive stylistics, schema theory, and conceptual metaphors theory, and last is figures of speech as features of creativity in language use. To minimize the duration of the presentation, you can always pause the video. So this is the cognitive stylistics theory. This is conceptual metaphor. So this is figures of speech as features of creativity in language use. So this is the source of the data. The second part of the presentation, which is findings and discussion. I would break down the parts into two. The coherence among figures of speech, and next would like to discuss new conceptual mapping and new stylistic frameworks. For patterns of language, Blake uses to portray new metaphorical and conceptual image schemas. I divide it into 3 points. There are personification, symbolism, and then paradox, which are the one kind of figurative language. So the first point I meant is personification. You can always pause the video to read closely the analysis. So we can draw assumption or conclusion that human qualities have been attributed to Rose and Worm, and then Rose is someone who was made sick and destroyed by the worm, and the worm is also someone who has the power to fly in the night, find out bad, and destroy the rose. For the symbolism, we can conclude that Rose symbolizes innocent girl or woman or lady with fresh and perfect romantic love. Meanwhile, Worm symbolizes evil, a seducer, a destructive, which is very bad in general. And for the paradox, it is a kind of disorderly and non-completely mutual love that the man offers. If we look closely to the analysis from by or using the paradox, they are to be considered as a sexual relationship that is socially immoral. The woman is delighted and half ashamed to accept, and it also emphasizes how dark and the character of the worm is and how innocent the rose is, as she still thinks it is the form of love when it has been dark and sacred. So we get to the second point of finding and discussion, which is new conceptual mapping and new stylistic frameworks. So let's get back to the first line. "O Rose, thou art sick," is a powerful metaphorical image. Blake maps Rose. Through this mapping, Rose turns into a person who, as analyzed before, can be referred to as a woman. However, according to our cognitive understanding, Rose is an inanimate abstract or notion and unintimate thing. So how can we abstract imaginary thing to be a woman? So it is absolutely the power of figures of speech through which Blake brings concepts together to create a new metaphorical formula that can be evoked. Similarly to the extent of the worm, through the mapping of worm turns into an intimate person who, as analyzed before, can be referred to as a man, and also by the figures of speech, it helps to evoke what kind of man he is. So we get the first formula. The rose is a woman, and the second, the worm is a man. To extent of what kind of woman and men are those, the rose and the worm is respectively is achieved by using symbolism, and to the extent of knowing what kind and the way they run their relationship is achieved by using paradox. The visualization. You can see that the source domain is rose, which shares characteristic of a woman by mappings by personification and symbolism. Thus, we get the formula: the rose is a woman. Goes to the worm. So this is the source of domain. It's the worm which shares characteristics as an evil man or a Batman a player. Evil man as the target domain, mapped by personification or through personification and symbolism, and thus we got the formula: the worm is a man. And welcome to the core part, where the core message of the poem is that the rose is sick, by strong line which is put by the Blake in the very first: "O rose, thou art sick," as thou, which means you itself, addresses the rose. And that says that the whole poem is portraying who, how, and by whom is sickened. Visualization of the mappings. The source domain is a rose, which or who is a woman, because we have analyzed on before accounts, and the target domain we got sick. Why is she sick? Because of his dark secret love, which destroys her life, or she is destroyed by his false love. And the formula itself thus results: the rose is sick. And this kind of mapping is impossible to get if we don't analyze, or if Blake doesn't use any kind of figures of speech, and we didn't analyze the coherence of the figures of speech themselves. So we'll get to the conclusion at the very end of the presentation. The first point: the sick rose offers new images schema and new conceptual metaphors and new types of mapping between source and target domains. Second, Blake has achieved these techniques by applying the strategy of coherence among figures of speech. Those are three: personification, symbolism, and paradox. In Blake maps rose and worm into a person as a woman and man respectively, and it is achieved using personification. Thus, we got the formula: the rose is a woman and the worm is a man. In what to extent of what kind of woman and man are the rose and the worm is respectively achieved by using symbolism, and to know what kind of the way they run the relationship is achieved by using paradox. By that, we can get that the core message of the poem is that the rose is sick. These are the references. These two. So that is it. That wraps up all of my presentation for today. At last, I say thank you very much for your attention. I do really look forward to your constructive in the comments down below. Keep being productive and while working from home, and stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy. God blesses you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.